I got a strange going on out here. Something just killed my dog.
Something killed your dog?
Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for joining the show tonight. You're watching the Cryptid Podcast, and I'm your host, Daniel Hamilton. You guys, tonight I got something really cool for you guys tonight. I have a research team. They call themselves Sisters of the Moon. And before we get to them, let's do a little bit of housekeeping here. Again, I want to say thank you so much for everybody for the time that you take out of your busy day to come onto the channel. Check out the content, leave the likes, the comments, share, subscribe. It's awesome. Thank you so much. If anybody here that's watching has had an encounter or and would like to come on the show and tell their story, tell us about your encounter, you can email me at the Cryptid Podcast 72 at gmail.com. Again, the Cryptid Podcast 72 at gmail.com. And with that being said, without further ado, let's bring two of the three members of Sisters of the Moon on, Deb and Barb. Ladies, thank you for joining me tonight. How are you doing?
Good.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah.
So, I believe I reached out to Deb because you had posted something on a Facebook group that you and I are part of. And you said, yeah, sure. And then you were like, well, I belong to this group. Would you like to have all three of us on? And I'm like, well, yes, I would. That would be awesome. And then unfortunately, scheduling conflicts, the third member of your group was not able to attend tonight, which is okay. I'll extend the invitation to her if she'd like to come on by herself. That'd be awesome. So let's go from center to right. Deb, where are you located, and what made you? Well, who's the founder of Sisters of the Moon?
I don't really think there's like a legit founder.
No.
We all kind of met because we went to this outing that somebody had shared a long time back, wanting, saying it was an open invitation, basically, I guess. And we all met and got to know each other and became friends. And we were in relatively close proximity, except for Sandy, which is Barbara's sister. And so she's in Georgia.
Okay.
And but we just hit it off and got really lucky on one of our first outings together. And from that moment on, we thought, well, we've got something, some sort of chemistry, maybe, because of how lucky, we were with the things that we had experienced then. And that we originally had 5 members, and then we kind of got down to 3, and I was in East Texas at the time, and up until I married Larry, and now I'm in Tennessee. And so I do a lot of driving back to Texas. And because Barbara, I don't know, there's just something about me, Barbara, and Sandy when we're together. I don't know if it's just because we're all so loud and we laugh a lot and we draw attention a lot, or if the Bigfoot just maybe like the sound of our voices. I don't know. But we've been really lucky.
Yeah.
And so we don't want to mess up a good thing we've got going. And so we get together as often as we can, whenever we can.
Yeah.
Perfect. So let me ask you both this. So I'll ask Barb this one first. So before you guys got together, and again, it sounds like pretty relatively quickly when you guys got together in this big group setting, stuff started popping off for you. But before that, what was your thought on Bigfoot? Like, was it not even on your radar? Was it something that you're like, oh, I'm all in on it? Or, what was your thought?
Before the group?
Yeah. Was Bigfoot on your radar before?
Oh, most definitely. I've been interested since I was a teenager.
Okay.
And then in 2005, I moved into a home in Northeast Texas up on the Red River, and I had activity at my home.
Okay.
And, I just kind of ignored it for a while. I thought it might be Bigfoot, but when I found out it was, I started trying to do things. And then I started looking for someone to learn stuff with.
Right.
and found Debbie. And then Sandy is my baby sister. So, and she's always been interested too for a long time.
Okay. So
So
going
that's
back
how
to
we
when
got
you were a
started.
kid. Nice. How about you, Deb? What was your thought process? What was your, was it on your radar, or was it just something you maybe heard stories about and you're like, ah, it's just nonsense?
Well, I lived in Malta, Texas, which is deep East Texas, Northeast Texas. And where I grew up, I was only about 30 miles as a crow flies from Falk, Arkansas. And Falk, Arkansas, of course, is famous. But back then, I was a little kid, and we didn't know what a Bigfoot was back in the rock ages. Back then, we just knew about this creature called the Falk monster. And this was, uh, probably the early 80s when we started having activity on our property there in Malta. And we didn't, like I said, we didn't know what a Bigfoot was. We had not heard that term back then. We
Right.
just knew what the Falk monster was, and nobody knew what the Falk monster was other than this big, hairy, stinky thing that lived down there in Falk, Arkansas. But we never dreamed that it could come, down to where we were in Malta, Texas. We thought it's just going to stay up there in Falk, I guess. But my daddy and I had activity at our homes. My mama was sick, and so she was in the house most of the time. But there was a lot of stuff that happened when my daddy and I, were outside and doing things. We were experiencing some strange things,
Right.
but we had no clue what was causing it. And then years later, when the internet and the computers and all of that became, something that everybody had, and by that time I was hearing the term Bigfoot, I started getting on the internet and looking up Bigfoot and the Falk monster and found out that they were supposedly one and the same. So I started listening to sounds, and the sounds that I was hearing on the computer back then were the same sounds that my daddy and I had heard
Mhm.
there at our house in Malta. And so I had him listen to it and asked him if he had any idea what it was that I was playing for him on the computer. And he said, he goes, I think I know what it is, but tell me what it says it is. And when I said Bigfoot, that's what it says. And he goes, that's what I always thought it was. And I was shocked by that because I didn't know, he was an old man to me.
Right.
I didn't think he knew anything about anything on the
Oh, of
computer.
course.
But he goes, that's what I've always thought it was. But in retrospect, he was from his parents lived out in the California area. And for all I know, back then, they might have heard the term Bigfoot long before, this little old deep East Texas country girl had ever heard
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it was like what 1967 is when the Patterson Gimlin film was recorded, and then I think the Falk Monster happened in 1971. I want to say, and then that movie came out in 1972. So, let me ask you both a question. So, have either of you had a Class A, or well, I hate using Class A. Have you had a sighting? Have you physically seen one?
Debbie.
I have.
Debbie had. Barbie, you
Yeah.
haven't.
Believe it or not, no, I can't tell you I 100% saw one.
Yeah, but I'm sure you've encountered something.
Oh man, I've encountered a lot.
Yeah.
Okay. So, why don't we go and first we'll go, Deb, let's go with your sighting. We'll go like, where were you at? Roughly what year was it? And let's get into the content of that sighting.
Okay. Trying to remember the year. Barbara, do you remember?
What year was that? Was it 18?
18 or 19?
Oh, so recent.
Kind of, yeah, pretty much. We had already started our research, and I had been invited to, me and another girl that was in our group at the time, had been invited to meet with some other researchers in outside of Sam Houston National Forest. And so we drove down there because where I'm from in Longview, we were probably about 3.5 hours from Sam Houston. And of course, by this time, we had heard all sorts of stuff about Sam Houston. So I was ready to go, man. I was like, yeah, I'll be there. And so me and the other girl went, and we decided that night we would go on a midnight hike at a trailhead out there at Sam Houston. And Sam Houston is huge, and it's very well known for a lot of sightings. But I had never been there before, so I wasn't familiar at all with the area. And so one of the other girls that we knew that was also down there at the time, she was like, "Well, there's these 3 or 4 different, places that we go to sometimes." And so she named off different trailheads, and we just picked one, the other lady and we left out and drove out to where it was at, following it on Google Maps and everything. And we got to the where we were going to pull in. It was not quite 12:30 at night. And so the whole time that we're driving, it is nothing but just thick, thick trees. And I was really surprised because, in most national forests or parks or whatever, they're kind of cleaned out, I guess you could say, along the sides of the roads and stuff, and around the hiking trails where you go into park and stuff. They're usually the trees and stuff are thinned out, but it was thick as thieves through this area. And so I was going really slow, and there was trees lining each side of the road. And then as I was getting closer to where the trailhead started, like I said, I'd never been there before, and there weren't any like lights or anything, like most streets will have a street light here and there, but there were none going down this road. It's just forest, it's forest roads. And so as I got to where the trailhead was, I could see that the road had a place where you could pull in to park in the trailhead. Now, the only lights I had were my headlights that was on my vehicle at the time. And so I almost go past it because that's how, dark and thick it was. But when I got up to where I could see, oh, this is it, I turned in kind of sharp because I was almost past the whole thing. And as I'm pulling up towards where there was a little, edge to where you could park, um, as I'm pulling in, my headlights are going from my right to left because I'm having to curve around, following the curvature of this little area as I could see it. And as I'm curving, my headlights catch this huge creature, and they cross. It's running from my left to its to right, but my headlights are going from right to left, so it was caught in my headlights for several seconds, which in the grand scheme of things, that doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're sitting here looking at something that's, not supposed to exist, I guess a lot of people don't believe. So I was in awe, and I hollered out to the girl that was with me. I just saw a Bigfoot, and I'm kind of circling around trying to catch it in my headlights again. But when I saw it, it was coming from the left, and it went down what looked like an incline. I just noticed that it went down, but I didn't see like what it was on, Going back the next day, I could see the whole lay of the land and everything, but it went down this incline and then it just disappeared. And so I kept circling around trying to find it again to get it back in my headlights, and I couldn't understand where it had disappeared to. But when I went back the next day, that's when I saw that there was a creek bed down there between us. We were up high, in the elevation according to where that creek bed was, because it was a good ways down in there. And where I had seen it run, it had come across the actual trailhead from one side of the woods across the little hiking path to the other side, and had go down this slope that went down into that creek bed. But like I said, it was in my headlights for at least, I'd say, probably 4 or 5 seconds, maybe. And in the grand scheme of things, that doesn't sound like a lot, but it is when you.
It is.
When you see it.
It is.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. So about how wide is this trailhead?
The trailhead is just 2 people could walk side by side on it.
So
And it's got a footbridge that
Okay.
goes from where you can park, because I've been out there many times now. But it's got you can park there, pull up to this little edge, and you walk just a few feet, probably maybe 10 feet. And there's a footbridge that goes across that creek. And I had not seen that footbridge, when I was pulling in because it was back over to my left. And then that footbridge connects you to the trail that goes off into the woods. And so it had come from the back side of that footbridge and evidently and ran across the little trailhead and then down that slope into the creek bed.
How many
But I
strides?
mean, I could, huh?
How many strides did it take to cross that path?
I don't know. I didn't see it until it got to the right side of the path. So I had no clue because I was pulling into park. And so it just, luckily my lights hit it just as it was going down that little slope. Sorry, I talk with my hands.
No, you're fine.
I'm trying to quit. But
No, that makes it
and
better.
so when it was going down the slope is when I first really saw it. And then, it disappeared into the creek bed. But I could see that by the time it had gotten down lower where I was losing it in my sight, I could see the back part of its shoulder. And it had a muddy looking spot there. But the hair on the back of its head and through here, from what I could see, looked to be about that long, which would be like 3 to 4 inches long. It was blowing as it ran.
So it was moving.
Yeah, it was moving fast. And what gets me looking back and, thinking about it, when we run, we're swinging our arms, or I am.
Right.
And it didn't seem to be swinging its arms that much. It did have its arm down beside it. I remember that, but it was covered in this whitish, like grayish colored hair. And I remember I could not see its fingers. I could only see the hair, and then it looked like there was something down there, but I couldn't make it out. So
About how tall do you guesstimate it being, do you think?
Well, I did make like a visual from when I first saw it. The tree behind it had a little scrawny trees next to it with just the thin individual branches coming out. And from what I could remember, I was thinking it looked to be about yay tall next to this branch. And so when I went back out there that next day, I measured and all of that. Some of the people that we had spent the weekend up there, with in camp at this get together, I told them about it that next day. And when I told them where it was at and what trailhead I'd seen it at, the two of the girls said that there had been sightings. I told them, I said it was either white or light gray. And when I told them the trailhead, they both had said that there had been sightings of a white one out there. And so maybe it was white. I don't know. It was one or the other. But so that, because they're from that area down there where I'm more northeast Texas and East Texas, they were more familiar with that area down there.
So I'm not sure, people watching or listening is going to know how tall yay big is. So would you say maybe 7 feet, 6 feet, 8 feet?
I would say probably about 7. Yeah. I mean, it was definitely bigger than any man I know. And Larry, he's 6'3", and it was definitely taller than he is.
Yeah.
But it didn't seem like it was just, huge, gigantic.
Right.
I mean, to me, 6'3" is pretty big.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm 5'9", but still,
yeah,
it looked. I just remember its shoulder. From what I could see, its shoulder and its arms, or its right arm, it was huge. Just the breadth of the arm just looked massive. Of course, it's covered in this hair too, and so I'm sure that hair added some size and volume to it.
Right.
But it just looked big.
About what time at night was this?
It was a little before 12:30 at night.
Nice. That's awesome. I mean, again, I saw my first one, like I said, when I was 12, and she was about 25 feet away from me, and she was massive. And I say she because when my dad turned the brights on the car, she turned at the waist, and you could see it. you know.
Was it
and-
covered in hair?
Yeah.
All of it?
Well, most it was mostly, but not 100%. It's like
Not
it seemed like the
fully.
hair was a lot thinner
Yeah.
up here
I've
than
wondered about that actually and never really
than on
Yeah.
have
her
talked to
shoulders.
anybody that had seen a female.
Yeah,
That's cool.
but like you couldn't really see anything from the waist down. But her movements were so fluid. Just
Yeah.
it was just all it was just all one fluid motion. I saw her go like this. She had hair hanging down off of her forearms and area. She was like a dark grayish charcoal type color. And then she did that swivel to like half step turn, took like half step, and then in 2 steps she was off into the woods. So, but yeah, so when you see him, it's absolutely amazing. So now let's go over here to Barb. So Barb, you had said, since you were, a teenager, you and your sister had some encounters, not necessarily sightings, but what is one encounter that just really, when you get to thinking about them, like literally just shoots right to the forefront of your memory?
Well, I never had any encounters until I was older. And I was in Texas on this property I was telling you about. I was always interested. Now, my sister had an encounter that kind of got us to looking on the computer. She had a computer we could look on, and so we started looking at it. So when I started having things happen at my home, I kind of remember, hey, I saw somebody talking about this somewhere. Well, about 2013, I got somebody to come to my house and just talk to me, and I was telling them about what was happening, and I was told I was having genuine encounters. They were coming up to my house, just doing crazy stuff. At first, they showed a little bit of aggression.
So you're saying Sasquatch, Bigfoot were actually coming up to your house?
Absolutely.
And
She's
okay,
got some fascinating stories.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Let
See,
me see the
I
show
got
by yourself.
I got to hear this. Okay, what kind of stuff were they doing?
Well, at first, took a big giant crap by my patio for one thing. And I had my back door pushed in. I had it pushed so hard it popped the chain lock out of the wall, and it pulled the frame away from the wall, from the house. It pushed my door in. But at the time I didn't go, hey, Bigfoot did that. I thought, well, I really don't know what I thought. And then another night, about 2:00 in the morning, I just heard this terrible commotion come out of my son's bedroom. And I said, go to sleep. Well, the next morning he goes, Mama, he said, I wasn't making that noise. He said, something reached through my window and pushed 2 TVs off in the floor.
She has
What?
this TV
Yeah.
stacked on top of each other.
Yeah, he had them on the
Right there,
table by the
something.
window. The backs of them to the window. It pushed them just right into the floor.
It reached through the window and pushed oh my goodness.
Yes. Well, we still didn't let none of this scare us. And I started about this time walking my pastures, being seen out in my pasture. And then I was feeling comfortable with me. And they started bringing me gifts. They would bring me headless rabbits. They threw a deer leg up on top of my house. They would just bring me little trinkets. We played stick games. I'd put sticks out. I'd put them in a certain direction, and they would change them to make them look like they want to. They were writing glyphs to me, but I have no idea what they mean. I've just had so much stuff happen at my house. One time I took a piece of copy paper, and on one side I drew a stick lady, me, and a stick kitty cat, and a doggy, and a bunny rabbit. And on the back side of the same piece of paper, I drew a stick Bigfoot with big hands and big feet and hair was sticking out everywhere. I took this out in my pasture. I had almost 30 acres. And I took this out in my pasture and I put it on the side of a bush. And I took a stick and I drove that stick down into the paper to hold it in the ground. I go back in the house. The next morning when I go out there, this piece of paper has been picked up, put on the other side of the bush with the Bigfoot side up, and the stick is driven back through it. And that just kind of, it's like, wow. I wouldn't even talk about it for a long time. I thought it was crazy. It took me a long time after I knew Debbie to tell her about it. Because I thought, she's going to think I'm full of woo.
I was so excited.
Have you ever seen them kind of like looking into your house?
They probably did, but at nighttime, we had an arrangement. At nighttime, I was in my house and my blinds were closed.
Yeah.
The yard.
You heard him singing. Didn't you hear him singing? Wasn't it you?
You heard him
You could
singing?
hear him cooing, or not singing, but the cooing sound or whatever.
Oh, yeah, they coo outside my window. Now I see you talked about music. I used to sing karaoke to them.
Really?
I'd have karaoke shows for them about every night.
She'd sit by her window and sing.
They loved them. They loved them.
That's
and then
crazy.
she could hear him cooing
Yeah, they coo outside my window. I was real sad one day. One of my horses was struck by lightning, and I was been crying all day long. And that night when I'm laying in bed, I could just hear out outside my bedroom window just, ooh, coo, feeling so sorry for me. Like it could just feel my pain, that I was so sad and upset, and it felt sorry for me.
See, you hear. I'm also a co-host on another show, and it's called Mysteries Unknown, hosted by Josh Smith. He's like my brother. He's from Arkansas. He's from not far from Falk. And we tend to not agree with what Bigfoot is. He believes more of a spiritual Nephilim, and they're up to no good. Me, I believe they're flesh and blood, and I think they're like humans. You have your good ones, you have your bad ones, and Josh thinks the same way as there. But you can have a good one and get them on a bad day, and that just kind of shows me that they have empathy,
They do.
in a way. It's I hear people say, oh, they're nothing but evil, and they're this and this, and it's like, well, then just call the human race all evil, because honestly, I think you have humans that are more violent than 8-foot tall, 700-pound creatures that live in the woods.
Well, I know they have empathy, because in one of our trips to a location we go to in Georgia, my sister Sandy has suggested, we're always all so upbeat and having a good time. Why don't we try being sad?
Mm-hmm.
So we're sitting around the fire, and I just bust out boo-hooing. Now I put on the performance. I was crying, and I probably cried, Debbie, 5-10 minutes, just cried and cried, snot. I was crying.
And she was loud.
Well, after I stopped, in about 5 minutes, there's a food plot down the mountain back behind us, and something was down in the food plot, running back and forth, just screaming. Like it couldn't stand not knowing what was wrong with me.
Yeah.
Or was it afraid that it was one of its offsprings?
Right.
I don't know. But the crying affected it big time.
And Cindy was with us at that time. We didn't know that she was going to do this. We didn't know that she was just going to bust out crying. So she scared the crap out of us, But when she was crying, and then we realized what she was doing, and then we were hearing this like she said, it was just running back and forth, and it was wailing too, like
Yeah.
upset. And we were sitting there just, I know our eyes had been as big as saucers, and we were smiling from ear to ear. We were like, holy crap. First, she
And we
scared the
even
crap
got
out
it
of
on
us.
audio. We did good that trip.
Yeah. Yeah, we got it on audio. You
Oh,
can
you
hear it
do?
way off in
Yeah.
Georgia.
Oh, I wish
Yeah.
I would have known
hope
that. I'd
Debbie
have you
still,
send it to me.
yeah.
I'll
Well, I
have to
lost
find
my
it.
recorder. I have to say I had it on audio because I lost my recorder, but I think Debbie's has it on hers.
Yeah, hers was probably better sounding, closer up. Mine was further back. Where we sit and camp in our Georgia location, we've had a lot of good activity there.
Such as
Well, all
Oh,
sorts of stuff.
rock throwing,
Rocks.
circling our
We
tent.
actually went live on Facebook. You know how you can go live?
Yep.
While where we're at, we're on top of a mountain in
Mhm.
Georgia, and the road is so narrow to get up there. And we pulled in, and it goes down at an angle on each side of where we set up our camp.
Mhm.
And then back behind where we put our tent and stuff, there's you can walk way back, and then it just drops straight down.
Mm.
But if you walk straight back and then go to the left at an angle, that's where this big open area type food plot place is. But on each side of our camp, where we have the fire and everything, and where we pull in to put our, park, we put our cars out by the road, our vehicles. But where it drops down, it's very heavily wooded on, the other three sides around us. And that's where so many nights we think it's juveniles coming in there, and they would start throwing rocks into camp towards us sitting around the fire. And it got to the point, and we've been there so many times, that certain times we can get signal because we're up on top of this mountain. And so I tried it, and I went live, and we were able to go live. Sometimes it would lose signal, but then it would come back. And so there were people saying, oh my God, I can, they could see the rocks coming just flying into our camp. And at one time, Barbara's vehicle was parked over to the side, right on the edge where the dirt from our camp area. This is not like a campground. This is
Right.
just a spot where you can pull in and stop, basically. And so it's kind of, open in some areas with dirt. But she had pulled her vehicle right up to the edge where it start going down at a slope. And that's the side that the rocks had started on. Well, one of them, whatever, threw something, and we heard it hit her wheel, the metal part of her wheel. And I got up there, I walked over to it, and it was this concrete piece. It was like, like if you were working on a road or something, but there's no concrete roads. They're all dirt roads. But it was this big concrete looking rock thing, and it had hit her wheelbase,
Mhm.
and I turned around like a mama scolding her children, and I went, do not
Yeah.
throw this. Don't throw this. It hit her car. I'm getting on to them.
We
And
do.
we're
We
cracking
talk to
ourselves
them.
up. Yeah. But and another time, Sandy and another friend of ours were sitting there. We had 5 of us, I think, there, 4 or 5.
It's 5 of us.
And yeah, and sometimes the rocks would come back from the back side of our tent, come up over the tent into camp where we're sitting around the fire. And another time, it just be from all 3 sides. But Sandy and I think was Sandy and Patty sitting by each other, Barbara, when that
Yeah.
one,
Yeah.
this rock came right between them, and Sandy heard it whiz by her ear. I'm sitting at an angle across from Sandy, and I see it, and I'm hollering rock, letting them know, incoming. But it just goes, and it goes down at an angle, and it hit. We had rocks around our fire pit that we had built, and started.
It
So we had
landed
put
by our
rocks.
foot. Yeah.
Yeah, and it hit the rock there and bounced back towards Sandy and came up, landed right by her shoe. She bent down, picked it up, and held it. And I've got a picture of it with her holding that rock in her hand. But we got to the point where we would go live anytime we could. So some people out there in Facebook land, and sometimes it pops up in my memories where they'd be on chat, I'd have them, I'm live and they're watching it. They're like, oh my God, I saw that rock, and all this stuff.
They'd hear them running up. They'd hear that
Oh yeah.
pitter
Oh, wow.
patter running up behind us. And
Yeah, we put a canopy right in front of our tent door on one of the trips, at least, probably more than that. But we had hung like a wall on that canopy on one side that had pockets in it. But there was a gap between where the canopy was and the tent wall was, and about that wide.
Yeah.
From the leg of the canopy, and then that wall, of course, was on that. Well, I've got my camera. I had been live, and I was still live, and I was like, I'm fixing to go in here, so I'm fixing to go get something out of the tent, and I was bent down to unzip the tent, and as I'm bending down, a rock comes flying in between the leg of that canopy and the wall of the tent. It came flying in and came right down beside me. And I went, oh, shit, something like that, because it startled me.
they're dead on accurate with those rocks.
Yeah, they are.
But they never hit us. They have never hit us. They've come close.
Yeah.
But have never hit us.
Now, let me ask you this, you guys, because one, they're huge mimics. They are like master mimics. Have you guys heard like babies crying, women screaming, an owl that has like a bad case of bronchitis? Have you guys ever heard anything like that?
And we hear all kinds of strange stuff.
We've heard,
and
we've heard all sorts of stuff.
Debbie actually captured gibberish.
Yeah.
At one of our locations.
Okay, so
And
I'm
it's
just
awesome
going
gibberish.
to preface this right now. I'm definitely going to have you guys back on. Hopefully Sandy will be able to join. Any pictures, any audio, please send to me so we can play that on your next episode. Because you guys are awesome.
We've had an awesome time together. We've only been doing this together. Actually, let's see. Today is 25. January 2016 is when we met at a get together, and we decided to start a all female group.
Yeah.
Researchers. And we spent 2016 getting to know each other and planning on stuff. And our first actual official outing was in January of 2017. And since that time to this time, we've had so much stuff happen to us. We are just blown away.
Well,
we didn't expect it.
It's awesome that you guys, you just mentioned that, you're an all-girl research, all-woman research team. What drove you to start this research team? And how did you come up with Sisters of the Moon?
Well, we just all have common interest of finding our own answers. And actually, the group was started after a song by Stevie Nicks.
Oh, I love Stevie Nicks.
Sisters of the Moon. And people have thought many times we're witches. We are not witches.
Yeah.
We're all grandmas.
Well, see, so here's the thing. When I saw Sisters of the Moon and when Debbie brought, I was very hesitant because at one time I had a paranormal podcast, and I did not dabble with the occult. I did not mess with satanic rituals. I didn't mess with black magic, witchcraft. I didn't want any of that stuff on there. And I got some really threatening emails that pretty much made me delete my channel and delete my email and get completely rid of all that stuff. So, but then, when she started talking a little bit more about it, I was like, okay, yeah, this is definitely something that I need to have on this channel, and it fits in perfect. So, you guys, I definitely want to have you guys back on again. If Sandy can make it, that'd be great. If not, still I'd have you guys on. But again, any audio, any pictures, video, please send it my way, before we have that. And that way I can set up everything. And then, hey, you guys sent me this video about this. And then I'll show it and you guys can talk about that. But, before we end this, I'd like to know, what do either one of you think about Sasquatch? Like, what do you think it is?
I think it's flesh and blood with special abilities.
Okay. How about you, Debbie?
I was flesh and blood from the very beginning. I never thought it was anything but flesh and blood going into this. But then some of the stuff that we've had happen and witnessed with our own eyes, we can't explain. And without going into those stories, I've seen something
go into one of those stories. You've just hook, lined, and sinkered me. Like, I gotta have one of those stories.
Tell them about the times real quick at Killing
Field.
What'd you call it?
The Killing Field. We name our locations.
Yeah, we name our locations.
The first time we ever went out together as a group was to this location that we were all going to camp at and everything. And when we were looking for a place to camp, it was me and another girl, and we went into this big open area. It was real. Well, it was three of us, actually, two of the other girls that used to be in our group. And we were going to turn around. And so the driver was backing in, and I was in the back seat of this big truck. And so I'm looking out the back window to make sure she doesn't hit anything, because there was this big mound, of looked like a little hill back there. And so as she's backing up, I see a bunch of bones laying back there. And I'm like, okay, hold on. I said, there's tons of bones back here. And so once she gets turned around and everything, we decide to stop and get out and look. And so we're looking and we see it's deer bones. And so we look off to the right a little bit and we see more deer bones. We go over there and look. And then when we're looking around, we just keep seeing more and more and more. And we keep following the deer bones. And we end up coming around this little curve where it kind of opens up even more so, because, we were out closer to the road, the dirt road at first. But then we get back where it's more heavily wooded, but it opens up and it's just this huge, massive piece of, woods. And we're walking through there and there's deer totally intact in some cases, their legs would be snapped in two. Some legs were completely gone. Some we see just their spine, the neck and spine, spinal cord and everything, and just be twisted. Most of them still had their antlers, which was very interesting. At first we thought, okay, it's poachers or something, they're killing the deer.
Right.
But a poacher's not going to leave the antlers.
No.
And some of them had nice sets of antlers. And so we're like, okay, this is weird. That's why we named this location the Killing Field. And we decided to go camp down from it. And when we camped down from it, that's when we really had some awesome activity. And so we kept going back and going back and going back and just had all sorts of stuff happen. And
well, you didn't tell him about the chimes.
Oh yeah, the chimes. Yeah, and so yeah, that first time. See, I get so excited and sidetracked. When we camped that night, it was just three of us. It was me and two other girls. One of them's name is Patty. Patty and I were in the tent together. It was freezing. So cold. It was so cold. We had started a little bitty fire, and Patty, that was with us, had brought her chimes. And so I'm the tallest one, or, at the time I was the tallest one there. And so I get up on this stool. We see that there had been a nail up in this tree. And so I'm like, I'll just hang it up here. And it's close to a lake, kind of. And so we think they had hung the fish up there, to do whatever when they've had their catch. And so, because that's why that nail was up there, we believe. And so I hung the chimes on that nail. And I've got a picture where I had to get on a step stool to stand up on my tippy toes and reach my arm up as high as I could to even reach that nail.
Mm-hmm.
Because, you don't hang your catch way down low because there are black bear in this area.
Right.
And so that's how we kind of know that's what that nail was for. So I hang those chimes way up there on that nail. And so we had a cooler out in front to the right of our little tent. Patty and I are in the same tent. She's in a mummy sleeping bag with her face. That's the
Yep.
only thing you can see. I'm on a cot over from her, and I'm covered up in like Princess and the Pea, where I had tons of blankets and everything. And then the other girl is in a tent, and we're set up in an L shape.
Mm-hmm.
Her tent is at an L shape with ours. And she had pulled the girl that we was with, she had a great big massive truck with big old, chrome silver bumpers. She had pulled it back behind to the side of our two tents at an angle. And so the fire that was directly out in front of our tent, when you looked out the doors, you could see the fire. It was lit up, and the chrome from back behind us on the truck was reflecting the fire. It was lighting up the chrome. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so it was creating shadows of anything that was between us. And so we could see that something was moving out there. And but anyway, that was the second night that we could see something moving. But anyway, so that first night we're asleep, and Patty is an extremely light sleeper, and she hears something standing on my side of the tent, which is the side that cooler's on, in front of my head, on the outside. She said that she could hear this thing just breathing, and she said it sounded like it was really congested, and it was just.
Mm-hmm.
And so she said that she was trying to wake me up, but she couldn't get, she was in this mummy sleeping bag. And
Right.
so she couldn't get me. And she told me that she was like, trying to whisper.
Yeah.
Anyway, so when she did wake me up, she had told me that she could hear this massive, heavy breathing standing over the cooler. And she said, she just imagined it, thinking, that it was wanting to get in this cooler. But
Right.
granted, we had this tall canopy next, over us and everything.
Yeah.
Well, it was that next night that the chimes that were hanging on that tree up there, something wakes us up because it's knocking the hell out of the
No way.
Yeah, and so I get up. Now we're prepared now because she's already said, look, something was in camp last night. So we prepared everything. We ran a line between our tent over to the other girl's tent where we could pull them, if we heard something, or just so we'd all be aware of what was going on. Well, we didn't have to worry about that because when something started hitting those chimes, we all could hear that. I mean,
Yeah.
it was loud. And I had a recorder set out that second night, so you can hear the chimes on that recorder just dingling away.
Now
Not
let
a
me
drum.
let me ask you real quick. So were the chimes making noise like a breeze was going by, or did it sound
No,
like someone was smacking? Oh my
it
God.
sounded like something was hitting it. So I decide I'm going to be brave and I'm going to look out. Now, this was our first time really camping together and Bigfooting,
Yeah.
really legit Bigfooting.
And
So
he
now,
showed up.
yeah, I'm sitting here on the side of my cot and I'm thinking, okay, Debbie, you can do this. You can do this. We had even left the little zippers undone at the top so we could look out in case the heavy breather was back,
Right.
we could look out. And we stoked the fire before we went to bed so that it would stay going a long time. So anyway, I finally work up enough nerve to stand up and look out, and I'm praying silently that my knees don't pop and make
Right.
any noise from when I'm trying to stand up, because I had to squinch down, to get over there to the doors. And so as I'm looking out, I can see these chimes. Now, the tubes, were like yay long.
Okay.
And if something hits the chimes, usually they go all willy-nilly.
Yeah.
And that's what it sounded like. Like the chimes were ding-a-ling-a-linging together, but it wasn't like they were willy-nilly. It didn't sound like they were going crazy. You could just hear them ding-a-ling-a-ling a little bit.
Right.
When I looked out, the chimes, like if they're hanging like this,
Yeah.
they should have been,
Kind of wrapped
moving
together.
around.
Yeah.
These things, when I looked out, this is how I did to Patty. I was shocked because I was like doing like this to her, and she's like, what is it? And I'm going, telling her that's what the chimes were doing. They were all hanging perfectly straight down, like as if no wind or anything was moving them. They're hanging straight down, but they're all going straight up like that, parallel to the ground.
So whatever's hitting them was hitting them so hard they were going like this, and they'd come back down, and then he'd hit them again.
But the thing is, the tubes,
Yeah.
they weren't all over the place like they should have been if something had hit them.
Right.
They were going straight up where all the tubes were perfectly in their same shape as if they were hanging down. The ball in the middle was moving and hitting the chimes, but the chimes themselves weren't moving. They were going up and down like this, but they weren't falling down because the sheer gravity of them should have made those chimes fall down.
That's crazy.
But and I just kept doing that to her because they were just perfectly parallel with the ground, and I can't explain that. And because of that, what I saw, and you can hear it pretty much on the recording, it was kind of like bump, bump. But when it would go back down, it was like it was hitting something, kind of stopping it. But when I was looking, you could not see anything back there stopping it. So that's why now I say I think there's something more to them. I just don't. And in all honesty, I don't even know if that was a Bigfoot doing it.
Well,
I just know that we had Bigfoot activity of different kinds in that area. But those chimes itself, I don't know what was doing that.
Do you think it was maybe cloaked?
It could. See,
Yeah.
I didn't believe in all of that back then.
Yeah.
But now I do wonder about that.
I wish I could find the video. I saw the video probably 5 or 6 years ago, and it's this lady. I want to say Pacific Northwest area, and she owns this land, and it's all woods, just magnificent old growth woods. Kind of has like the moss growing off the tree. I mean, it just reminds me of like the Olympic Peninsula and stuff. It's how it is, right?
Beautiful, then.
Oh yeah. So she has these paths that she takes people through. She invites people to come and say, "Hey, I have activity. I'll show you prints." And there's someone videoing, and they're videoing the lady, right? And she goes, she's like standing off on like the right hand side of this path, and you could see the path that goes down and then kind of goes off and then into the woods, right? And she's like, over here in this area, over in these trees, this is where I saw a young juvenile climbing up a tree. And about that time, the camera catches something that I can only describe as like camouflage, like the Predator from the Arnold Schwarzenegger movie, jump out of the tree and then run off down that trail and then banks off into like the dark part of the trail. And the person goes, I just saw something. And she turned around, and that's when you heard something go through the woods. And she's like, oh yeah, it's probably one that jumped out of the tree. And I'm like, that and I wish I could find that video again, but
I've heard other people describe it that way.
yeah, it's crazy. It
Yeah.
is absolutely crazy. So again, ladies, I am definitely gonna ask if I could have you guys back on my show. So
Sure.
perfect. Is there anything you guys want to tell our listeners before we end the show?
Hey, get out in the woods, and if Bigfoot doesn't show up, you had a good time camping.
How about you, Debbie?
Just people always ask us, if we're scared, if we're worried that they're going to do something to us. With as much stuff as we've encountered and as many opportunities as they have had to hurt us or carry us off, if they wanted to, they could have, and they haven't. So those people that are interested but may be scared, to get out and search because they're worried about what Bigfoot might do. Now, I'm not saying that there's not any bad ones, because I think they probably have temperaments like humans. We've got our good and our bad. But we have been very lucky to have a lot of stuff happen to us. We camp a lot. Matter of fact, we're going camping this weekend at our Tribulation Bay location where we recorded the gibberish. But we've had a lot of activity, and a lot of times it's just me and Barbara. It's just two of us.
Yeah.
And it's these creatures, these huge, now not all of them are, born adults. So there's younger ones and juveniles and different sizes. But there are big ones, and they could have just thrown us over their shoulder and carried us off a million times, and they never have. They've hit our tent. They've dragged their fingers down our tent. We've seen their palms as they're pushed in on our tent because we use twinkle lights outside, and we've seen their shadows.
Part two.
Yeah.
I cannot wait.
They've had so many chances, to where they could have just carried one or both of us off. Shoot, they could have slung us over both shoulders probably. They haven't.
Let me ask you this. So if someone is having some issues, is there a way for someone to maybe reach out to you and say, "Hey, I've got this area. Would you guys be interested in coming out and checking it out?"
We'd love to.
I'm giving you guys a plug. So how can people reach you guys?
They can message us on Facebook.
Yeah.
And what's your
Debi Porch?
What's your Facebook page?
It's just Debi Porch. Mine's Debi. It's our names.
And I'm Barbara Locke.
Barbara Locke.
Locke.
Okay. Locke.
And I'm Debi, Debi, Porch, like the front porch.
Okay. I'm put down Locke. Okay. A question. You guys don't have a page for Sisters of the Moon?
No.
We didn't go into this thinking, we're going to become a group. We were just a group of women that liked each other and got along and decided, we all liked Bigfoot, and we decided we'd all go camping.
You guys should.
Yeah. And
you absolutely should.
We just got really lucky.
We're too lazy. We want to be in the woods camping.
Listen,
we don't want to be.
You're not lazy if you're out in the woods camping.
Well, that's how we
5
spend
days
our
at a
energy.
time.
That's our adrenaline.
We did go to the Pacific Northwest and chain coursing. We went to the area where the Olympic project is at. Shane Corson let us stay there for 3 days in the Olympic project building. And then we went back, just me and her and Sandy, her sister Sandy. We went back out behind the Olympic project and camped. And we can tell you all about that on the next show.
Oh, yes.
But we hiked all through there. We saw a naked hiker die.
We sure did.
We'll tell you all about it.
Ladies, I am absolutely just flabbergasted just by what you've told me, and I'm super excited about what you're going to tell me on the next episode. Thank you so much. It is an honor and privilege to get to talk to both of you. Please extend my gratitude to your sister, and hopefully she'll be able to make it on the next episode.
Yeah.
So other than that, you guys, I'm going to go ahead and we're going to end our show. Is that all right?
Sure.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for
enjoyed it.
Yes, ma'am. Stand by, both you in the lobby, and then after the end credits roll, I'll talk to you guys for a couple more minutes. All right?
Okay.
All right, everybody. So that's our show for tonight. You guys, what an amazing show. What two strong, brave women going out in the wilderness to look for this elusive creature. My hats are off to both of them. Again, if you guys have had an encounter and you'd like to come on the show and share that encounter, please email me at the Cryptid Podcast 72 at gmail.com. And remember, you guys can look them up. I will put their names in the description so you guys can send them messages on Messenger, Facebook, if you have an area that you're got something going on and you'd like them to come out and check it out. Without further ado, I'm going to say good night, everybody. Again, thank you so much for joining us for the show tonight. As my buddy Josh says from Mysteries Unknown, stay prayed up. And as I like to say, remember, a legend always starts with a sighting. Have a good night, everybody.
I got a strange going on out here. Something just killed my dog.
Something killed your dog?